Welcome to Product Academy Tough Stuff, the podcast where we cut through the noise and get straight to the toughest challenges in product management. I'm Tanja Lau.
And I'm Francesca Cortesi.
In each episode, we tackle one tough question. No fluff, no filler. Just candid insights from seasoned product leaders.
Our guests deliver actionable, real-world answers. Whether you're an experienced product leader or just stepping into the product world, this is your go-to podcast for sharp, tested advice, condensed for your busy schedule.
One tough challenge, practical insights, short and real.
Let's dive in.
Hello, Dominique. Thanks for being here. You and I, we have a couple of things in common. One of them is that we both suffered a burnout. Mine is like 7 years ago, and yours led to you leaving your CPO role at Scout24. So let's dive in and start with the first question. Do you think the burnout really harmed your career?
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. I think it's a very important topic, and thanks for creating this space for us to discuss this. So for me personally, I don't think it hurt my career, but there were a couple of things that I did, like maybe consciously and sometimes a bit subconsciously, to make sure that it didn't become like a burden and rather something that I could draw energy from. But I do think it's very contextual, and I'm sure we'll get into some of these things. Like context, I think really, really matters because it's such an individual experience with so many things attached to it. So yeah, for me personally, I don't think so.
Okay, good. Let's start with that. But I do remember that you told me on the day that it became clear that you would not return to work and you had to tell the team something. You told the HR team, like, call it whatever you want, but don't call it a burnout. And then a couple of years later, you're talking about burnout publicly. You're giving workshops and lectures about it. So what changed, and why did you decide to talk about burnout and not talk about burnout in certain situations?
Yeah, I think that the main reason for me was really very selfish. Like I felt I wanted to own my own narrative, right? So at the time, burnout felt like something that happened to me that I had no control over, and it wasn't, after therapy and lots of reflection where I thought, okay, like this is happening to so many people, and yet back then there wasn't all that available content out there. Like not a lot of people were talking about it. So I thought, if I shape the story the way it helps me and I can also help others, then I sort of regain control over, what this means for me, and also that, I can turn this into something that's positive. So it was really taking control over the narrative in terms of what it means for me, and sort of turning something that was a bad experience into something that I personally learned a lot from, and hopefully others can also learn from it, and more importantly, like never ever get into that situation in the first place.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really powerful. So if we now leave your individual context and think about someone, an individual contributor, a PM that is seeing signs of burnout in themselves, what does it depend on in your experience, whether this person should speak up or not speak up, and whom to talk to about this burnout situation? What do you think are things to consider?
Yeah, as I said, it's very contextual. So I also want to be very, careful about just giving advice and saying stuff that you can just follow to the T and expect great results. Mm-hmm. But in general, I would say there are at least 3 factors that you need to consider in a work environment, right? So the first one is the company. So has the company you're working in displayed any sort of positive experience with these kinds of situations? Like, what's the general policy around mental health? Is it a topic that's been addressed company-wide, or is it more or less like a taboo topic? So that's one thing. And the reason why that's important is because it also factors into the second point, which is leadership. So your boss needs tools to be able to help you. So if the company doesn't have that on top of their agenda, your boss might even not have the right tools and knowledge to help. So that's one thing. And then also, like how secure and how safe do you feel sharing anything but roadmaps and strategy with your boss? What kind of a relationship do you have? Are they sharing? Are they sharing vulnerable stories? Like you need to have a good sense of whether it's a relationship that you can trust. And then the third part is obviously yourself, because I would say, depending on where you are in your burnout journey, it might be helpful or it might also not be helpful. So what I mean by that is, sometimes I think we confuse just being stressed with being burned out. Like, it's a word we use very commonly, right? Oh, I'm burned out, I'm burned out, I'm burned out. And it means different things to different people. So, if you feel stressed, so in terms of, things are too much, I think you can still try and reduce your exposure to these stressors. You can sort of try and manage your workload and manage the way you work, right? But if you're venturing into burnout territory, I think it's more about not enough, right? You don't have enough energy, you don't have enough belief in yourself, so it's a different feeling. And I think that so when that kicks in, you definitely need to talk to someone. If it's not your boss, seek help outside of the company, seek professional help, but you need somebody to help you, figure out the next steps that make sense. Ideally, it's your boss, because they would know your context, they would know you very well. But if that's not possible, then, find another way. And oh yeah, last but not least, I think one aspect that is sometimes a bit that we underestimate is, like, what's your standing within the company? Like, if you've just been hired, if you're the first pick, for that position, you have a different standing than if you're choice number 2, 3, 4, or 5. It sounds really stupid, but that's just the reality of where we work in. It's like, how do you build, like, what sort of the street cred that you've built over time in the company that would maybe enable you to ask for things that, like, let's be honest, should be a normal thing to ask for, whether it's your first day or your 100th day or your 10th year at the company. But unfortunately, all these things sort of matter. But yeah, in the end of the day, you need to talk to someone. If it's not inside the company, then you need to go outside and just seek help.
Mm-hmm. So part of the help can come from a therapist or a physician that treats some of the symptoms, but a part of it also boils down to figuring out, what is my future at this company? Did
Right.
I call this correctly? Okay. And are you, if you're in this burnout stage in your experience, are you in the situation that you can even come up with future scenarios and propose something and be proactive about, like, this is what success looks like in this situation? Or are you, like, really reactive and you're kind of just seeking for someone who tells you what to do next?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think it really depends on where you are in that journey. Are you sort of managing the leading indicators to burnout, right? Then I think you can be way more proactive. If you've already passed the threshold and are firmly in burnout territory, there's just nothing, like, you need help ASAP. And I think making decisions in that state could also be, like, very, very, not dangerous, but, not the smartest thing to do. So yeah, 100% agree. Like, you do need help. And the stage of where you are in that journey sort of determines whether or not you can be part of the solution, or you need actually somebody to tell you what's the best thing for you to do next.
Mm-hmm. So if we flip the question and think about, will it harm my career if I don't talk about it? What's your stance on that?
I would love to say it won't, but I would really love to say that it doesn't, it's not going to hurt your career, but I do think you need to be smart about it, because at the end of the day, like, you are responsible for yourself. So you also need to make smart decisions. Again, if you're still in the mental state to be able to make decisions. But yeah, I would never say just go out there, and talk about all of this, as like open up your soul and your heart and pour out everything. I don't think that's the smartest way to deal with it, like on a general as a general advice. But you do need to talk about it, right? You need to talk about this with somebody who you trust and with somebody who can actually help you. I don't think it's enough to just talk to, say, a friend who's good at listening. It's going to help you somewhat, but at the end of the day, you still need to change something in your environment, in your attitude, in the way you approach things, and sometimes getting that nudge and getting that advice that you may not want to hear needs some sort of professional or trained skills, to get you to that point. So yeah, I wish I could give you a different answer to that.
No, it's fair enough. And I guess not all leaders are trained, because you said you need someone to talk to who is trained and who can ask the right questions. I guess not all leaders are trained professionals in that sense. Is there anything else that people who might be affected can do to prepare such a conversation? And also, are there any books or resources that you recommend for those people to gain clarity that can also be helpful if you don't have anyone to talk to at work? What would you say?
So yeah, in terms of resources, I think nowadays there's so much available out there. So a simple Google search or LLM search will help, and it will surface the right kind of material. Maybe there's specific books we can share later on, but there's definitely like a plethora of resources that you can, that will get you on that path. Say the first question again, or the first part of the question again,
So,
sorry.
how do you prepare for that conversation
Oh,
with a leader who might not be a professional who can guide you through the conversation in a very structured way? So is there anything that you can do to, when you work up the courage to talk to someone, is there anything else that they should do to prepare for such a conversation?
yeah, that's a tough one.
That's why we're
I
here,
think,
right?
yeah, look, I mean, to be honest, like if you have to bring this to your leader and guide them to help you, I think that's a red flag. You know, that's just my personal opinion. I think it's going to be very difficult because, on top of everything that leaders have to deal with, now they have to deal with like proper issues, that affect people's mental health, and that is not as easy as like removing a couple of rows and columns in a spreadsheet or adding slides to a PowerPoint. So I think that is very, very tough. So I'm not even sure that I would say try it. Because it is like, ideally, right? The ideal scenario is your boss actually talks with you and says, "Hey, Dominic, listen, I've been seeing this happening over the last couple of weeks. Tell me what's up. How's your day going? How are you feeling?" That, I think, is something that, even if you've never ever dealt with a burnout case as a leader, you should have some sort of empathy, and you should be able to recognize when your direct report is no more behaving the way they used to behave, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's why I'm struggling with this question, because I just can't see a scenario where my boss is so out of touch with, like, my performance, that I need to sort of tell them that, hey, I'm feeling off, and I think I'm burning out. Can you please help me? Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's the
I
best that
mean,
I have.
yeah, that's fine. See, I've been in the situation where my boss didn't even notice I had lost like 10 kilos of weight within a year. And like, and in hindsight, after I collapsed at my wedding, they were all like, oh yeah, this is what was happening, but nobody really noticed, right? And so I feel like we can also get used to a certain level of stress, especially if they're also stressed themselves, then they sometimes don't see it, right? But you once said something to me that I found really helpful, and that was when I was about to relapse into a second burnout, and you told me, like, do you have a plan? Because I told you I see all of those symptoms and I don't want to be in that situation again. And you told me, like, do you have a plan? I was like, no. And you were like, do you have a plan to get to a plan? And I was like, maybe. But I think that's a good advice. It's like, because sometimes we're also struggling in these situations with like trying to solve the big questions, like, do I even want to be a PM anymore? Or what do I want? Like, do I need to take like years off? Like, you don't see where this is headed. And so I think sometimes it also helps to like, what do I need to even start thinking about these big questions? And can I ask my leader for that? Because that might be just a couple of days off, or that might be like, I don't know, I need to work from home for a while, or whatever it is, right? But maybe that can help. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you should try and do everything that you can that is in sort of the power of your control, right? So if it, and again, like we're talking, say, pre-burnout, you're just dealing with a lot of stressors, then like do whatever you can, ask for whatever you can ask for from your boss, whether it's, as you said, like taking a couple of days off, finding ways to just to refill your energy tanks, like definitely do all of that. Yeah, so yeah, I'm not saying like give up and do not utilize your boss, like definitely do that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
So what do you think about whether or not it's harmful for your career to talk about burnout in an open way?
Nice flipping the question. So I'm in the hot seat now. I think there's still a lot of stigma. And I think especially in larger organizations, if you take a leave of absence because of a burnout and people know about this, I think it might affect the decision-making process of whether you get promoted to additional roles that are even higher. I think it can affect your career. So I see the point of why you maybe don't want to talk about it within this organization. I 100% agree that you should talk to someone, because that also means admitting it to yourself, which is something that I struggled with for a long time. I believe that it also depends on what does harming your career mean. Is it harming your career if you come out the other end deciding, like me, I'm reducing my workload and I'm still working in product, but differently now? Did it harm my career or not? That's for me to decide, right? It also depends on how I reframe the situation, I think. And then there's this special situation that I wanted to discuss where I'm getting a lot of messages from people who say like, yeah, I see all of these signs. Maybe I'm not burned out yet, but I'm like on my way to a burnout. I don't trust my company with this information. I don't think it will ever get better here. So I want to leave, but also I feel like I'm really stressed out by the thought of having to go through a lot of interviews now, like job interviews. The job hunt is a jungle. And so what do you say to those people who feel like I really need this job economically, so I cannot just take time off for 6 months, but also I don't want to be stressed with the job hunt, but also I don't see any like progress here in this specific context and environment. Like, what should those people do? Like, is there any advice that you think you can give them?
Yeah, that's tough, but I think in the end you need to prioritize your health. If you stay in that environment, you're just adding health issues on top of all the issues that you already have in the existing environment, right? So it's not that your problems will get smaller; they're going to get bigger, and they might even force you into a situation where, if you do not act, something will sort of act on your behalf, which is your body will strike and your body will tell you enough is enough. I've had enough of your BS. You're not listening to the signals that I'm telling you. So now I'm going to force you to listen. So yeah, I just don't think there's an easy way out except listen to yourself, like get yourself into a healthy situation. Because if you cannot take care of yourself, you cannot take care of others, whether it's obligations that you have towards your team or even, towards your friends, family, like you won't be able to be in a situation where you can provide whatever you need to provide for in in those cases. So like in my case, my body had to tell me that, enough is enough. Like I saw, like looking back, all the signs were there, and I just kept on going and just ignoring everything. So yeah, from my personal experience, and also from what I've seen and heard from friends of mine and coworkers of mine, like those who didn't act, their body told them when it was enough. And then you have the whole recovery phase. Like that's a whole different set of problems and challenges that will come your way. So yeah, I would say health first, do what's best for your health, and then try and deal with everything else. But again, like this really depends on, it sounds silly, but it depends on the health benefits your company has, what country you're living in, what state or what canton you're living in, and how the infrastructure is built around you in terms of mental health. In some cases, it's smart to not change your job and sort of get well first at your current position. And then if things don't get better, you're in a better state mentally, emotionally, physically to make, these kinds of decisions on your own. And maybe in other cases, the environment is so toxic that you just have to leave, ASAP, regardless of what other problems that you might be facing. So yeah, I definitely empathize with that situation because it's super tough. Definitely a tough one.
So maybe the plan to get to a plan involves looking at what are my rights, what can I build on in terms of health support, or like will my employer have to pay for a leave of absence for a while if my physician puts me on sick leave, and you don't even have to disclose why, right? I mean, they don't have to know, but maybe the physician in these cases is the first person to go to.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Good, tough stuff. That's why we're here. For me, I have to say the burnout still was one of the turning points in my life, and I would not eliminate it from my life if I could. I don't know about you. Would you try to eliminate it from your story if you could?
No, I wouldn't. No, not really. I think, I'm happy with the way I dealt with everything that came after that. It also forced me to think about a lot of things that I wasn't really, paying attention to. So I definitely feel, the thing is, sometimes I ask myself, knowing what I know now, would I still run into a burnout? Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know whether you have that question. It's like, are you burnout proof for the rest of your life just because you've gone through it once? Sometimes I feel yes. Sometimes I'm like, no. This is like, what are you doing every single day? Why? You're seeing all those leading indicators. You've sort of been there, done that before, and I don't know. I think it's still, it's like a never-ending journey. That's what it feels like. I don't know how you see it.
Yeah, and you can come out the other side making less money and still having a richer life. That's how I think about it. But that's maybe nice. A philosophical ending to this conversation. Thank you so much, Dominique, for talking about this important topic. We have a survey that we're conducting at Product Academy that we conducted also with your help, and we'll share all of the results to make it a bit less of a taboo in product. And I'm really curious to see the results soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanja. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Product Academy Tough Stuff.
We hope today's tough question gave you practical, actionable insights.
If you enjoyed the episode, do us a favor and leave a rating or review. It will help us grow the podcast and make future episodes even better.
Got a question for us? Send an email to toughstuff@productacademy.ch and ask away. We read any submission and might answer yours in a later episode.
Thank you again for listening. We'll see you next time with another tough challenge to tackle.
Until then, take care.